Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the 22nd episode of the IDRiM podcast and our second in a series on to celebrate Pride Month. Today, what we're going to do is focus predominantly more on policy and LGBTQA plus community, and we are going to explore, particularly in one country who seems to have a better situation on helping the LGBTQ plus community. Today, I'm joined by Jeisson Garcia from the UNGRD in Colombia, and he's going to talk more about what Colombia is doing. So, welcome, Jeisson.
Thank you so much, Mark and IDRiM, for this particular invitation here. I really appreciate this time and this moment, and I want to share all my experience and the experience of the National Unit for Disaster Risk Management in Colombia regarding this special topic that is LGBT communities into the national policies and governmental policies as well.
Thank you. So, first question is very much about, why were you first interested in LGBTQ plus community in disasters?
Well, it is really important because inclusion in public policy is essential because LGBT community people face some structural barriers that limit the full exercise of their rights. For example, in our country, where inequalities and violence are high, this population suffers disproportional discrimination in health, education, justice, and employment. And public policies must be ensure access to the protection of social inclusion as well and human dignity as well in order to guarantee, for example, sexual and gender diversity rights. It's not a reason for exclusion or violence. This is special because during the crisis, their rights are really vulnerable and increases a lot as well.
Yeah, so in particular in Colombia, as historically has a high, level of violence and crime. Does that mean that the LGBTQ community are very much vulnerable because of this?
Yeah. Also, it's one subject that we can talk about is double affectation. Here, this is a special topic that we can talk about. It's because how disasters are being involved into, for example, social vulnerabilities, especially in conflicts. So Colombia has been passed for a conflict of internal conflict of more than 50 years. And so this topic refers to overlapping the vulnerabilities of LGBTQ people face in crisis. So on one hand, so they are being affected about the disaster itself, but also they have been affected of displacement, loss of housing, or livelihood. And in the other hand, they have been expected some kind of discrimination based on their sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, and also in the internal conflict. Because here in Colombia, especially transgender women are being affected by the internal conflict. And so, for example, in big cities like Bogotá, um, um, the life expectation of transgender woman is around of 25 years. So this is a really low expectation. So they have been excluded by these kind of things. So they have different kind of vulnerabilities constructed before. So these layers of exclusion make recovery harder and reduce an access to protection, participation, dignity, and humanitarian response in order to reconstruct those kind of efforts as well.
Yeah, and that's actually quite surprising when you said about the life expectancy of a transgender woman is only 25. is there any particular reason why it's only 25 in this case?
Yeah, it's because here in Colombia, so we are a really open mind country regarding LGBT community. So, for example, we have been the second country in Latin America in order to promote the same-sex marriage, for example. And also here, transgender women can change their names in order to be inclusive into the society. However, why they have been affected by different kind of homicides in Colombia? It's because here Colombia is a country that is built under the violence. So Colombians are a little bit conflict between them, and also it's because, for example, here communities are really, deeply straight directly to their policies and how they are think, and also it's because Colombia is really, really religious country. Most of the population here, around of 88% of population in Colombia, it's Catholic. So that's one of most reasons, like for example, like the conflict is designed, and also, for example, we have a special guerrilla here in Colombia that is ELN. ELN is the most the oldest guerrilla in the world, and also they have been constructed or built under the thinking of the right, the morality, and the Catholicism in order to build those kind of conflicts. And this is really special because we see how Colombians, transgender women are being affected. So, for example, like a couple of weeks ago, a woman in Medellin, she was killed by a different organization, and she was being affected. She was like thrown out into a river, and the people was recording her. Even they were not able to help her to support. And this is really special because, for example, here about the ombudsman office in Colombia, for example, in the last data census that we did in 2023, for example, people in Colombia suffer, LGBT communities suffer around 33 homicides of gay men and 26 trans feminicides, mainly marked by extreme violence and impunity as well. Also, like 21 cases of police abuse and 42 violent incidents in prisons as well, and around 14 reports of violence in schools and 8 in health sector as well. So this is indicating like cases of family rejection, public harassment, also the conversion therapies as well. These figures show that the structural violence remains into that the rights of LGBT communities are still not fully guaranteed. And that's the main reason that we made the Pride, in order that we can build different kind of rights and guarantee our rights as well.
Yeah, and so would you say that the definition of masculinity, femininity is still very rigid and hasn't changed over time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's correct.
So I mean, if you look at places like where I am in the UK, the definition of masculinity is very, I would say it's a
Mm-hmm.
lot more blurred than it used to be. So the traditional view of masculinity is that the man goes out to work, the man has to be strong, has to be this very dominant attitude. And in the UK, it very much has changed, and it's got to the point where masculinity and femininity are starting to come together a little bit more, and it's kind of, a man now does not have to be So basically, historically, if you were a man in the UK, you would never think of, giving a cuddle to another man. It was very much a no-go area. Today, men hug each other all the time in the UK, and it doesn't mean, that you're gay or anything like that. It's just very much that term of masculinity has, changed. And I get the sense that that type of thing hasn't changed as much in Colombia.
Yeah, yeah, it's because, for example, here it's something that is not really common in order to see like the reflection of this culture. So it's because really traditional. So violence against LGBT people in Colombia is neither accidental and nor isolated as well. So it reflects a different kind of cultural, deeply rooted and traditional masculinity mandates that validate the discrimination, control, exclusion as well. So in this case, for example, it's really important that I don't know, maybe that we design different kind of technical guidelines for people in order that they can understand that we're not really different, that we are the same, but we love difference. So that's like the main reason. So it's really traditional here in order to see how the masculine affects and transform the genders. Like it's transformed. The special thing is just transforming masculinity. It's just not a gender issue. It's about rights. It's about justice, protection from harm. In a country where diversity is still punished with violence, building a safer country for all the identities also means like we are building more resilient communities. This is special not just in Colombia. If we talk about African countries or other countries, it's really different. So it's about not just masculinity, it's also about religion, it's about traditions. It's really complex about it, and also it's because, for example, here in Colombia we're a very diverse country. We have more than I don't know, more than 200 indigenous communities in the whole country, and also they have special rights and special like state constructions. It's because our constitution provides them like they have different kind of laws. For example, they are not reaching by the same laws in Colombia, like the same legislation. Just for example, in extreme cases. However, they punish people that are practice different kind of LGBT like orientations, like transgender, gay, or lesbian. And in one case, for example, we here in Guajira, that's a department in Colombia, we saw a movie. We watched a movie about a transgender woman that is a Waju indigenous woman, and she was being affected because she did this movie, and people in their community just fire her house, and everything was damaged for her. We can watch into the movie how emotional this is, like the lack of representation of the community and the traditions. It's just because she is not different, because the word is not that everyone is different. We are the same, we have the same rights. However, we love different, she loves different, but the communities doesn't understand. They don't understand anything about how her feeling is. It's different. So I think that this is like we just need to ensure to incorporate into the policies the different kind of sectors, the different kind of backgrounds, not just risk management. It has to be about health. It has to be education. It has to be how we can involve different kind of communities into the different kind of contexts, because we just need to make the communities resilient against everything. I think that it's the most important thing that we can talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to go back to your previous point about conversion therapy as well. And so when I looked at it, some countries, most haven't, but some countries have already, outlawed the practice. And what I noticed when I was looking, and you can confirm this to me, is that like my country, that your country as well is now looking at banning the practice and is considering legislation on that. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So for example, here in Colombia, conversion therapies, or also we call reparative or corrective treatments, they are like uh, very affecting and deeply harmful practices that for change the person's sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression. Here in Colombia, we have a lot of churches, especially Christian churches, and they promote the conversion therapies. So, for example, we have been promoting a special policy regarding nothing to change is the name. Nothing to change in Spanish, nada que cambiar. This is special because we have been promoted in order to finish the conversion therapies in Colombia, because right now they are illegal. So we have to finish them. So according like the Office of Ombudsman in Colombia in 2023, like different kind of cases were reported where individuals, especially trans women, lesbians, and gay men were subject to conversion therapies. So, for example, these conversion therapies includes different kind of forced institutionalization, like where young people are confined under the pretense of curing or the identity. Also, psychological abuse as well. This psychological abuse was carried out in homes or religious institutions, and also medical or pseudo-medical interventions as well without consent, and that's especially affected. And also it's because here, and again, the first relationship of society of a human is the family, and the family pressure of coercion, it's very complex, especially in conservative families and also in rural contexts. Urban contexts are really different in Colombia, but rural contexts are affecting really a lot. And these practices often intersect with family abandonment, stigmatization as well, violence, reinforcing systematic discrimination, and putting LGBT communities into risk of suicide, for example, mental health crisis, and homeless as well. And right now we are talking about homeless because people in Colombia, usually they move directly to some special areas, for example, like surrounds the river, or maybe in some risk areas. And we can see, like, for example, in the settlements, like in urban areas, that are under risk, for example, any kind of threat, like I don't know, like landslides or floods. LGBT communities especially lives in those areas. So it's because they had been came out from the families and they become homeless. So for that reason, they just try to move there. It's because they just need to be allocated in different kind of in order to live. So this is really a really deeply issue. So we have conversion therapy. We have the issue that the family doesn't accept people. Also, we have conversion families that makes the homeless of LGBT communities. And also in this case of disaster and emergency response, we just need to avoid seeking help in shelters or public spaces. So in order to or public spaces out of fear of discrimination. And also we have to create different kind of lag support networks that make recovery and protection the more difficult during after the disaster. So that's an issue that involves different kind of topics inside the issue. So that's we are talking about right now, why LGBT communities are being affected by different kind of backgrounds, special disaster risk management. But we have to check that those vulnerabilities were built before by the family, by the government, by guerrilla, paramilitarism, conflicts, different kind of contexts that affect the communities as well.
Yeah, and actually there's a lot to unpack there. And first of all, I want to talk about the suicide bit. Suicide and why I believe that this is a big issue, not, particularly in the LGBTQ plus community, but also amongst men as well, is that suicide is termed by WHO as the silent epidemic. It kills 720,000 people on average every year globally. And it's in my country, if you are 40 and a man, if you're under the age of 40 and a man, the biggest killer is suicide. And that is quite a stark thing. It beats cancer, it beats road traffic accidents, it beats everything. So it's a very much it's a disaster that is I call it the silent disaster, because it's one that we don't really want to talk about as mental health. And we know in cases of LGBTQ plus communities, no matter if it's in Colombia or if it's in the UK, it's very much you are at higher risk of suicidal thoughts. You also mentioned that in conversion therapy, that there are medical interventions. What do you mean by medical interventions?
Yeah, so the medical interventions are especially related for example, in order to enforce people, all LGBT communities, in order that they can change like the sexual orientation or maybe the gender, because sometimes we are talking about transgender women. So, for example, here in Colombia, especially exists different kind of like hospitals, but they are not hospitals. They are not public institutions. In order to change the mentality of people, those hospitals or those institutions are made by Christian churches, and they practice different kind of like medical interventions regarding like for example, I don't know, like inside the conversion therapies, those methods are included into like spiritual rituals, like hormone manipulation as well, but especially about mental health, widely condemned of psychological counseling as well, or even physical abuse as well. So, for example, here, despite the progress in legal protection of LGBT community, conversion practices still occur. So, as I mentioned before, religious, family, or unauthorized health settings, the victims are like adolescents, like transgender youth, denied access of gender affirming care, but also people exposed to emotional blackmail, medication without consent, or prolonged isolation as well. Currently in Colombia, as I mentioned before, it doesn't have like a specific law of banning conversation therapies. However, those practices can be persecuted under the existing laws, for example, converging to torture, child abuse, medical malpractice, and gender-based violence. So, for example, regarding those kind of issues, mental health, as you mentioned before, it's really important because here in Colombia, like the statistics and the data show us that suicide morbidity is really significant, especially, for example, to compare to LGBT communities and individuals in Colombian population. So, for example, with the studies, those studies are showing that rates 22 times higher. So a survey, for example, finding that 55% of LGBT community in Colombia report suicidal ideation, and 25% of them has attempted to suicide at least once. So this is really higher than general population, where studies have reported 6.5% of suicide ideation. So like 22.4% of suicide planning. So this is really deeply in order to see. And for example, the United Nations for Risk Management Office show us the suicide as a special issue and as a special threat into the biological risk. So like this chapter and this cluster of society, it's really important in order to see how we are going to implement different kind of policies, like in order to help people. And this is really special because we just need to see how those issues are interconnected in order to change it. And also it's because, for example, in disaster risk management, like in order to connect the conversion, we just need to check with the health workers in order to attempt to offer the conversation instead of conversion for the first help, like for example for the psychological first aid, in order to recognize that this is really harm in order to cause the conversion therapies. This trains emergency and health personnel to respect the gender identity and sexual orientation. And also we have to make that the mental health supports and be inclusive, ethical, and not discriminatory, especially in crisis. It's really important to see it as well.
Thank you for watching today's episode. This is just part one of a two-part episode with Jeisson. Next episode, we're particularly going to look at what Colombia is doing in terms of legislation towards LGBTQ plus A communities and disasters. We're also going to look at how the community is at slightly increased risk, especially when we talk about homelessness, to STDs, in particular HIV, and what that repercussions that actually has on the community. That episode will be out on Friday, and we hope you have a good rest of the day, and we hope to see you soon. Bye.